Cotton gin and expansion into the Old Southwest. Short staple cotton was ideally grown in southern soils and under southern growing conditions. The problem, though, is that it took an entire day to hand clean only 1 pound of cotton. So Eli Whitney invents the cotton gin in 1793. This makes it possible to hand clean 50 pounds of cotton per day. Regions of Georgia and South Carolina produce almost 60 million pounds per year. Most of these exports are exported to England. Other areas follow South Carolina and Georgia. Cotton growing depletes the soil, and there is a new need for land. This causes a rush of southern farmers to the Black Belt, which is an area through western Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi with fertile soil. This becomes nicknamed as the Alabama Fever, in which white Southerners and their slaves fled to Georgia, Alabama, and Mississippi. Here, they clear forests, drain swamps, break ground, build houses, and plant crops. These migrations cause a population boom, and Southerners take the lead over the north in westward expansion. Of course, this is at the expense of the Indian population, and the 5 civilized tribes are forced into Indian territory. This is due to the fact that there is no room in the social order. It was only whites and blacks, master and slaves, no room for Indians. Therefore, Indian removal, like Southern expansion, was driven by the slave system. The flush times were surges of expansion which carried cotton planting over the Mississippi into Louisiana and Texas. This expansion of cotton leads to the expansion of slaves. Southerners believe that only blacks can be forced to work the brutal pace of cotton plantations. So, as the international demand for cotton rises, so does the slave demand. In 1808, the U.S. outlaws international slave trade. And from 1776 to 1786, all states except for South Carolina and Georgia ban or tax the international slave trade. But by 1791, as a result of the successful revolt in Haiti, all southern states prohibit importing foreign slaves. Due to smuggling that continues, South Carolina reopens the trade in 1804. 40,000 slaves are imported into Charleston until 1808, when a bill to abolish the importation of slaves becomes a law. Now there is an increased need for the natural increase of slaves and for the need for an internal slave trade. The cotton boom causes an increase in the internal slave trade. Plantation owners of the Upper South sell their slaves to cotton-growing regions of the Old Southwest. About 50% of slaves are traded to Southern expansionists at this time. In order to move them, many were gathered in slave pens and moved by train or boat or as cargo in steamboats. This is where the term "sold down the river" originated. Many would move on foot in coffles. This was a common sight to see at the time. When they arrived at markets, they were auctioned off. Traders would often separate families in order to maximize their profits. The size and profit of the slave trade went against Southern claims that the Southern system was benevolent. British textile manufacturers were interested in Southern cotton. By the Civil War, 60% of exports were cotton and generated nearly $200 million of revenue per year. Exports of cotton helped develop the Southern and Northern economies. The slave force helped finance industrial developments in the North, since the North was responsible for shipping the Southern cotton. This provides capital for factories in the North. The concentration on agriculture inhibited the growth of Southern cities. As Northern cities continued to increase, the South fell behind. The South remained rural and less developed in their canals and railroads than the North. The South was also left behind during the Transportation Revolution. The South, however, chose this focus on land, slaves, and the demand for cotton. They saw no need to risk their investments on railroads, canals, and factories. They believed cotton was safer than free wage labor. Cotton was king.